Roche field, bring some of this content through into our atmosphere again. And that's why even live fish can fall. Because I'm talking about this destruction of this planet probably happened about 50,000 years ago. And it was an ocean planet. Tiamat was an ocean planet, so most of that is ice, as most of the asteroid belt is ice. Those are frozen oceans. And even its contents will fall to our Earth live thousands of years later because of the nature of the refrigeration. And then it's reactivated by our Earth atmosphere. And every time this stuff happens, and people all over the world have seen this happen in front of them, and it's never been properly explained. So, these beings actually did not go to Tiamat. They actually landed on our planet, which was mostly covered in forests at that time. And it was 5 different continents, not what we know today. And they went into the tunnels that people like Eric von Däniken, have discovered and amazed at how these tunnels could be cut. And some say that they even went under the oceans. Like in Samuel here it says, "And the king said to her, Be not afraid, for what sawest thou? And the woman said unto Saul, I saw gods ascending out of the earth." In Bulwer Lytton, his book The Coming Race, he says he describes the existence of a utopian society of advanced beings who live in tunnels and caverns beneath the surface of the earth in a land called the Vrilya. These beings, known as the Ana, were forced into the inner earth because of earth changes, specifically a flood which destroyed their civilizations. Okay? So again, information about Hollow Earth. And by the way, Hollow Earth is a fascinating subject if ever there was one. This is Admiral Byrd, you may have heard of, who flew across the North Pole and discovered that there was these caverns that, again, are not on any physical maps. For those who don't know about this, they should check into the concept of Hollow Earth. In the book of Job, it says, "Dead things are formed from under the water, and the inhabitants thereof." And then when you look to the comment about this, it says, "The place where the Rephaim stay, which is beneath the waters." Dead things in Hebrew is Rephaim, the offspring of the fallen angels, akin to the Nephilim. But again, just for now, let's notice that they're talking about living under the waters. The Celtic legends speak of exactly the same thing. How that when the gods, the negative beings, come to attack the gods, they come from under the ocean. It's another thing that people just throw across the room and go, what is this nonsense? When they read it in a legend. They don't take it seriously. Now these beings came to our planet, and after they knew that their pursuers had basically gone, they emerged out onto the surface of the earth and set up their headquarters on the continent of Appalachia, and the headquarters was called Atlantis. Atlantis is not a continent. This is another piece of disinformation that's been brought out. There was 5 gigantic continents in those days: Tyrrhenia, Beringia, Oceania, Fennoscandia, and Appalachia. And Appalachia was in the north. It's where, North America, Alaska is, or where the Arctic is now, right across past Greenland, Iceland, into where north of England, and then into Sweden, and into Siberia. That whole area, but specifically the part between, say, Greenland and England. This is where Atlantis was, on a gigantic continent. You could walk the whole way. And the headquarters of these alien beings is what we've come to call Atlantis. And when they set up this advanced, they had all their technology with them, spacecrafts and all sorts of super technologies. Remember Superman, the movie? How when they watch Superman, when he goes up to his, his oracle or his tabernacle, his temple, don't they show him going north, up into the Arctic, into the snows, and then he goes into his precinct and it's all like a crystalline computer? Do you remember that? Superman from another planet? Yeah, somebody's trying to tell us things there. Anyway, these beings started to interact with us. Now, our planet, in the 65 million years or whatever we've been on this planet, Homo sapien has been on this planet as hunter-gatherers, we probably have been visited enormous amount of times by cousins and brothers from other solar systems. But the policy of most of those groups has always been to come here, do your research, but not to interfere in the actual destiny of the indigenous peoples, the Homo sapiens, the Neanderthals, and the Angus people that were on this planet. Not to involve yourself, and if possible, not even to be seen. Okay? But these beings who came here were what you would call in Milton the fallen angels, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. And they had an agenda that did want to interfere with the Homo sapien at that time. So they started to corral, and they started to research all of the life forms and all of the peoples of the earth at that time. And they started to corral, just like in the movie Planet of the Apes, they show this. They started to corral the people onto this place of Atlantis and started to check into their entire biology. And then at a certain point, thousands of years later, not immediately, because it takes time to set up all of these things, genetic changes were done. And the result being that almost all the original Homo sapiens were either changed, and those who weren't changed were killed or created into slaves and subsequently faded out. And the being that they created we might want to term Homo Atlantis. A being that has pure alien DNA and has pure human DNA. Okay? Homo Atlantis, from which we are all descended. But the euphemism, or the poetic euphemism for these people is called the sons of the serpent. Because like I said, the original people were called the brotherhood of the snake, or the serpent people. Not because they look like serpents, and we'll come to why they really were called the serpents in a minute. But their first progeny was called the sons of the serpent. And that's why we have in the Bible the term, it says, and God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. Right? They're telling you all about this in the book of Genesis. And by the way, does anybody know that the word Genesis even means the genes of the goddess Isis? Or the generation of Isis? Implying something? And in fact, the Bible, when it uses the word created, it's actually a mistranslation of a word that is actually more like our word build or construct. You know? So this is what we also have the term the firstborn. In the Bible, what we have to understand, because also, think of it, why would the angel of death or God, like even in Herod, you know, and later on before in the Pharaoh's time, what would be the importance of going and killing the firstborn of your enemies? Sure, wouldn't it be smarter to go and kill your enemy and have done with it? Why are you going to wait to kill all his firstborns? See? And secondly, no such atrocity happened. There's never any record of any massacre of any innocents or anything like that in physical record at all. So the firstborn is another one of these cryptic terms, and it's a reference to the sons of the serpent race, also known as the children of the Elohim. Some people might want to call the original serpent masters the Jehovah clan, the term that's spoken of in the Bible, and others might want to call the first group, their firstborn, the Elohim. Now, Christians will not understand this. What are you talking about? There is a rule of thumb that you can use in the Bible to make things a lot easier, and that is whenever you're hearing a term like that, especially Adam and Eve and Jehovah and Elohim, try to think less of an individual and more as a race. Okay, a group of people at least. And then things will start to be clear. Now they created this firstborn to serve them. And they did it by genetically changing the human and alien DNA together at the place we call Atlantis. But as time went by, maybe hundreds of years, nobody knows exactly the dates. The original visitation, of course, was what? 50,000 years ago. And we have, from that time, a great deluge. Remember when the planet Tiamat was destroyed, it said as debris fell into the earth and created enormous cataclysms. But it didn't create a pole shift. It just created enormous cataclysms that changed the face of the earth forever. But at least that kind of contamination slowly did subside over time. It was devastating, and many, many people died, and lots of changes in the land. But it was not so awesome, you see, that over a few hundred years, a certain amount of normalcy did not come back. Because the earth has been visited by that kind of trouble many, many times. But anyway, when they created this firstborn, they sent the firstborn out to be their servants, to actually go out into the Garden of Eden, into Atlantis, Appalachia, and their territories that they were conquering, and do their physical work for them. But after a certain period of time, these sons of the serpent had the human DNA. And therefore they had the humanity, the humanism, and the sense of spiritual connectedness to things, that sensibility that their own fathers didn't have. And it dawned on these sons of the serpent that finally they realized, to cut a long story short, that they didn't want to serve these masters anymore, because they probably didn't agree with them and didn't like doing this and didn't feel that they should be subservient. And it's interesting too, because they had the high intelligence and the divine spiritual connection. So they left. They actually upped and left as a race. Probably not all of them, but whatever the group of these sons of the serpent, they actually exited out of Appalachia, out of Atlantis, and resituated their own civilization on the continent of Oceania, which we now call Lemuria, which is estimated to be where the Pacific is, you see. And they completely left, just exited out, leaving their alien fathers with a predicament of what to do. So what they did is they went back to the drawing board again to create another entity. It says, let us make him who shall nourish and sustain us. What shall we do to be invoked? To be remembered in earth. We have tried with our first creatures. Look at this. But we could not make them venerate us. So then let us try to make obedient, respectful beings who shall nourish and sustain us. This is from a Mexican book, the Popol Vuh. Do you know the conquistadors, how many books they burned? You want to